So now check in your textbook for chapter 3.3. In that section, it talks more about what it is that causes matter to change from a solid to a liquid and a liquid to a gas. Among other things that you should be noting in there are some diagrams that show that, specifically how a molecule behaves when it's a solid or how a collection of molecules behave when they are a solid, as in, to use the example of water, again, ice, or how those same molecules behave when they are in liquid state, and then how those same molecules behave when they are in gas state. So do yourself a favor and use these boxes to sketch how those different molecules behave based on the diagram in chapter 3.3. Now, other information that you'll be able to find in that chapter is what we call the different ways that matter move from one state to another. So this line right here, you'll want to fill in with a matter of state, either a solid, a liquid, or a gas. Same thing with this line. You want to fill it in with one of those states of matter. And then right over here, you want to do the same thing and fill it in with one of those states of matter. So by now, you should have solid, liquid, and gas written on one of these three states. The next thing you're going to do, these arrows show how material could move from one of these states to another. This line right here is where you're going to write down what do we call that process when matter moves from this state to this state. This line right here is where you write down what we call the process as matter moves from this state to this state. Same thing with these blue lines here. You're going to write down the name of the process that moves matter from this state to this state. And same thing with these blue lines right here. This one here and this one here. After you do that, move on to the next piece. Okay, now that you've got some information on how the matter changes, the process that we call it as it changes from one state to another, come down here, and this gives you an opportunity to write down some of the different, how we describe the different states of matter of some materials, of some matter. So for instance, I know I've used this example water over and over again. So let's look at how I would use that in this chart here. I would write down how we describe that state of matter for water in a solid form, which is ice. I would describe what we call it when it's liquid, which is water. And I would describe it what we call it when it is gas, which is steam. Now, I could also describe a solid form of water as snow if I wanted to. So in some cases, there is more than one correct way to describe that state. And then the energy, I'm going to describe how the energy changes by which way I draw the arrow. So for instance, if energy is causing the ice to change into water, I'm going to show the arrow showing which direction I describe this change. So melting is how we would describe a change from ice to water. But freezing is how we would describe the change of water into ice. So you'll see that the arrow here is moving in the direction that water would change into ice. Same thing over here with boiling and condensation. Condensation is the process of steam turning into water. So the arrow goes in that direction. And boiling is one way that we can change water into steam. So there's an arrow here. Now, in many of these changes of states, there's more than one way for that transfer to happen. It's okay to choose the one that makes the most sense to you. And you might even find that in some cases, you're going to have to skip a stage altogether. For instance, if you burn wood, it doesn't turn into a liquid form of wood. But what we do see when you burn wood is a gas form. So you want to make sure that you are recording the ones that make sense. And if it doesn't apply, like wood not becoming a liquid, you can just put an X right through it. Now I've left you a blank one down here for you to come up with your own example of how these states of matter can change. Good luck.